Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope everyone is having a great night tonight. So Nicolas Pineault is going to join me again for another Facebook Live. So the last time I had Nick on, we kind of ran a little short on time. Nick had to run to another meeting, and we didn't get a chance to answer your questions. So Nick's going to be joining me again tonight to answer any questions you have on EMFs. And also, Nick has a course coming up. So Nick will also be answering any questions on his course if that's something that you're interested in checking out. So let me find Nick and bring him on the call. And Nick's been really busy lately. Hey, there he is.
Hey,
what's going on, Nick?
What's going on, Nathan? How's it sound?
Good. Yeah. What was that?
How's the sound? Is it okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect, perfect. Well, glad to connect again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming back, Nick. So I was telling the audience before you joined that we kind of ran out of time the last time I had you on, and we didn't have a chance to get to anybody's questions. And I know you've been a really busy guy between your book and your upcoming EMF course, so we really appreciate your time.
Definitely.
But also I wanted to share with my audience more about your EMF course. I know it's, one of my questions that a few people have asked me, I know it's really targeted towards health practitioners and doctors. If somebody just has a general interest and they want to protect themselves and their family, would this be a wise move for them to sign up for the course?
I think it's better to grab the book, to be perfectly honest. And the simple reason being that it's 5 webinars. So the course Electrosmog Rx, you can go to electrosmog.rx/JTOH to find more about it. But it's 5 webinars in 5 weeks. So it's 5 hours of education, and we go through exactly how practitioners can add EMFs as a factor in healing or disease in their clinical practice. So there's going to be questionnaires, patient questionnaires, discussions, and also how to how to assess stuff like patient compliance. So these are technical things that if you're not a practitioner, maybe you'll feel a bit that this isn't for you. But I'm sure you would still get value. That being said, if you're someone that's extremely advanced though in EMFs and you already know everything there is to EMFs, it's probably not for you either, because let's face it, I have people in the group right now. There's a private Facebook group for people who join, and we have 100 people so far that join, opening 200 more seats next week. Just because of the demand, it's totally crazy and unexpected, to be honest. It's been less than 3 days and already sold out.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's amazing. So the response has been great, but we start by the basics. The first webinar, I will take in consideration that practitioners don't know even what EMF means, and this is a reality that I face. Is some health practitioners know so much about mold, so much about heavy metals, and so many other aspects of health. And then when I tell them about EMFs, they say, well, don't put your cell phone near your head, and they don't know anything else. So you gotta really understand that it's also for beginners in a sense. Practitioners that want to go from step 1 to knowing what they need to know. And it's not by any means a replacement for a building biology certification. It takes 1.5 years, right? So it's more like, okay, how can you add that to your practice in a very simple way, and then all the tools you need to make it happen.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Hey, and Nick, that's such a good point. I've worked with 2 different Lyme doctors. I've worked with 2 different functional medicine doctors, and none of them knew anything about EMFs. The one thing they said was, don't keep your cell phone next to your head.
Yeah.
That was the extent of it.
It's not sufficient. Nathan, Dr. Klinghardt, and we talked about that a little bit during our last live, because he's part of the course. I interviewed him for almost 1.5 hours, and I'll have him again, and it might even turn into an official partnership. I'm trying to get a hold of his time. He's a very busy guy, but Dr. Klinghardt, for those of you who have never heard about him, he's part of the Sophia Health Institute, and he sees Lyme patients and also people with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, neurodegenerative diseases that most of the time would kill people. He's trying to get them back. And some of them he has healed stage 4 cancer before. So he has these amazing healing reactions. And the average patient that he sees, that's what he shared with me in the interview, has seen 23 other health practitioners before him. So
wow, that's crazy. That's unbelievable.
I couldn't
23
believe 23, and that's the average. So can you imagine
try to put yourself in somebody's shoes that they've been dealing with an illness. They go from doctor to doctor to doctor. They made it
crazy.
23. They're like, I'm going to give this guy a shot because maybe 24 will.
Exactly. I mean,
average. So there's people that probably saw 30 practitioners before him.
Maybe 40. I don't know. But basically, what he says, the number one overlooked factor is EMF environment. So it's crazy. And yes, it's sad, Angela. You're totally right. It's the kind of stuff. I mean, I'm just in front of my computer all day, and I'm not near these people that are sick. You know, I don't see them. I don't interact with them. But today I had a call with Melanie Dorion she's a fellow French Canadian from Montreal originally. She's practicing in Virginia. And she sees this Lyme epidemic in Virginia happening that's completely crazy. She tells me people are mold toxic, they're sensitive to everything, and she discovered a couple of months ago, I think, that EMFs is an issue, and mainly someone came into the clinic and she saw the person saying, well, I cannot stay here because the Wi-Fi is making me sick. She was like, oh my God, it might be true. And then she saw a second guy, a young folk, 22 years old, that literally his nervous system will shut down and it will almost tremble, like go on his knees and tremble and not be able to do anything if he's just in a room with Wi-Fi. So if you have these observations, and Klinghardt seeing Lyme patients get better if they remove EMFs and Lyme patients not getting better if they don't, you combine that with the studies, because the studies say one thing, and it's good that we have the studies, and it's still early, but counting on just the studies alone, I think it's somewhat insane, because when you look at sick people, do they get better or not? Well, they get better, and this is really what I want to focus into. I want to lay the foundational work we need to do to start addressing EMFs in a real serious way. And I'm no expert in EMF mitigation, Nathan. I'm not a building biologist. I'm not a geovital consultant, but I know that these guys exist. And I know that we need to go further than just turning up the cell phone. Because if there's a smart meter array, if there's wiring errors, if you have cordless phones, you might think the cell phone is the only problem. You have a cordless phone and it's right next to your head, right? So the multiple sources is what you need to consider. And also the hidden sources. And this is something I shared on the Dr. Pompa podcast. I think it's going to be posted in a couple of weeks. And it's crazy now that all these different things inside your house emit RF radiation, sometimes just as bad as a Wi-Fi router, but you have no idea this is happening. Is just emitting, and even when it's turned off, whether it's your printer, a Nix box, a different kind of, it's crazy that these things are constantly emitting. So you need to have some sort of recommendations for your clients and patients, like unplug everything, like don't take any chances. It sounds extreme, but unless you have a meter, chances are that everything is Wi-Fi. And when you look at what's sold at the Best Buy, this is the case. So you need to remove multiple sources in order to get the levels down. And the question is, what levels should EHS patients be at, or Lyme patients, or people with chronic disease? It's hard to tell. But when you look at GeoVital or not the American, but they do too, but the European Academy for Environmental Medicine recommendations, that European from 2015 and 2016, when you look at Bioinitiative report, when you look at the Austrian government, which mandates, or actually has approved GeoVital as like an official health intervention, well, they have levels that are so low, there's no way you can have a wireless device in the room and be at those levels. So we're talking about something so low that you even need to think about shielding your bedroom from your Wi-Fi environment. In my bedroom, I fail these recommendations. I can tell you that. And I don't have a cell phone on. I don't have Wi-Fi on. but my neighbors or just the street, right? So it's in certain cases, I would say, if you're extremely sick, like having a Faraday cage or a bed canopy, I think it might save your life more than most supplements protocol or IV chelation and whatnot. Like, it might be a first priority nowadays. It's hard to tell you that it is, but it looks like it might be the first step. And Klinghardt, this is his opinion. So, I mean, and the guy is super credible. So anyway, I'll go with questions now.
I mean, so many thoughts going through my head, Nick, but the landscape we're in is constantly evolving.
Yes,
so
for sure.
That means our approach is going to have to constantly evolve too. So what we're doing today may not work tomorrow, next month, next year, right? And what I like about you, Nick, is every time I talk to you, you'll tell me, hey, I just learned this, and what I thought before is different. So yeah. I want everyone to keep that in mind, that our environment basically influences our mitochondria. Our mitochondria create all of our energy, for 95% of our energy in our bodies. Our mitochondria are really impacted by these EMFs. So as the environment changes, what we do is going to have to change. And Nick brought up meters. It's so important that you arm yourself with these meters, because you can't see these fields. Some people can feel them, but not all of us can feel them.
Yep.
This is another good meter. This is a multimeter. Actually, I went to one of my clients' houses to just kind of, because he doesn't have the meters, and I was just kind of going around his place. And what was really interesting was, with this multimeter, you can test your body voltage.
Yeah.
And we were at his desk, and I told him there was a desk lamp. So I said, touch the desk lamp, and his body voltage shot way up. And even when he wasn't touching it, he still had pretty high body voltage. So I had him unplug his lamp, and it went way down. So that's something like you would never ever realize unless you have these meters. But just having like a desk lamp, you know, maybe it has like kind of poor wiring in it or something, but it's giving off a lot of stray voltage. It goes in the air, it absorbs in your body, and it impacts your health. So yeah, I really wanted to kind of stress your point about the meters, Nick. But let's do this. Let's go through the questions that people have right now. Then you can share an overview of the course.
Sure.
And we'll just kind of go about it like that. So,
sounds good.
Let me see here. Let me get my comments here. And sorry, guys. You know, I see some comments flying by on the screen. It's a little hard for me to see them on my phone because I have it so kind of dim. You know, because I have like all the blue light turned off on my phone, and with my glasses on, it's a little hard for me to see the comments.
I saw a couple comments asking you, Nathan, about what model of the meter you showed, a multimeter, what it is, and what's the purpose.
Yeah, so it's called a Neotech. It's like $20. I got it from Amazon. I'll share a link in the comments after, but if you just go to Amazon, you Google Neotech, it has really good ratings. So real quick, so you also have to buy like a ground that you plug into your outlet. So you have the black one is grounded, then you hold the red lead, and it tells you your body voltage. So it's a good thing. So it's a kind of, you can go around your house and you can figure out kind of the hot areas that you want to avoid and the cooler areas that are safer. And it's also interesting to wear things like flip-flops in your house or rubber-soled shoes, so you're grounding yourself from the floor, because there's power lines running through the bottom of your floor. And if you're in bare feet and you're right over those power lines, you're picking up some of that stray voltage. So a multimeter is a really easy way to figure that out.
And you know, Nathan, this meter, if people want to experiment with it, something it can help you figure out is which circuit breakers to turn off at night. Because something Klinghardt told me is with all patients, I recommend them to turn off the entire electricity to the whole house. So that's the extreme approach, because it doesn't want to take any chances. And he said, you know what, Nick, the only the only place I don't recommend turning off the circuit breaker is if you're on life support. That's it. So he's
right.
so he's a very definitive guy, and I like it. I like it because he has to say, well, if you're not compliant, you're gonna die. And for these people, it's true, right? So he's very extreme on his recommendations. But for the average person, what I do personally, I turn off the 2 circuit breakers associated with my bedroom. But it's not necessarily ideal because I have not tested this. If you test your body voltage lying on the bed, right, and you have someone else note, okay, I turned off number 1, maybe it's your bathroom, but somehow it might reduce your body voltage in your bedroom. So by doing trial and error do that with 2 people, of course, and you kind of scream at each other, okay, did it change? And you note the body voltage, you might discover maybe it's number 1, 3, 7, 11 that you need to turn off before bed. And then you have the best sleep because your house wiring might be going all through the walls. You don't know exactly how it's been wired originally, especially older homes. Sometimes it's nonsense the way they've been done. So if you do not want to turn off everything at night, it's one thing that you can do with the body voltage.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, that's such a great point because I did that, and it turns out my body voltage is lower with one of my circuits on than it is with all of them off.
Wow, that's incredible.
It actually works out really well because my hall light still works. So if I have to get up during the night and I need a light, it's easier than having to go and find the circuit board, the circuit breaker. But yeah, I mean, electricity it does some kind of queer things, right? So the only way to kind of really understand it is you've got to test.
Yeah.
And you have to test because you know what? One day they might install a 5G repeater outside of your place.
Exactly.
That's going to do. So the landscape is constantly changing. You can't just test once and be like, okay, I'm all set. You need to test and retest.
Yeah, I mean, pollution is increasing in cities, right? So the air quality in your home might be okay now, and in 5 years be horrible. Or maybe the smog will be thicker because somehow China has started coal mining. I don't know, but it changes. Even the water quality can change from season to season, day to day. So if you monitor your, I don't know, maybe you have your own water supply or whatnot, and you test it and it's clean, and you're like, oh, well, now it's clean. Well, maybe eventually there's going to be fracking in your area, and you don't know it's been contaminated, right? So different things change. So it's a great point, Nathan. You got to check these things from time to time.
Right. So let's go through. Let me look through and see if there's any questions here. So Chris Cross asks, do you talk about bioresonance? Quantum medicine and bioresonance will be huge in the future. So is that part of the course?
It's not part of the course. And as far as quantum medicine goes, and let's say if they refer to biofield, one thing I've been trying out is NES Health. Harry Massey has developed this company, and they have some incredible ideas about kind of testing the biofield, and they have an entire system that they created, and then healing the biofield using a special device. And it's called the My Health. It's this thing, and it's actually blasting me with emotional stress release right now. So after a hard day, it's a machine that does PEMF. It does scalar waves, different things, and it's
called My Health.
My Health, MI. So and not MY. Okay. So it's MI Health. So you'll find it. NES Health is the website. So I've been trying these things. Been improving my health a lot, to be quite honest. So it's definitely.
So what kind of improvements are we talking about, Nick?
My health is more stable. I seem to bounce back faster, more resilience in general. I've been trying a lot of things, but once I got on board with the My Health, it's there's different functions you can use, and these are like scalar waves, so it's not an EMF that will be detectable, and yet you have effects on animals, like they call them racing dogs or racing horses with it, and it shouldn't work.
So the same device that they use
with the same device, yeah, they use that with animals,
really?
With racing, like professional racing horses. There's a video online, a guy named Cyril Bork. who's a practitioner, and it's something like My Health Device Raging Bull. I think you'll find it on YouTube. But there's basically a bull that was about to kill people because it was so frustrated, and it's a 2-ton animal, right? So it's ridiculous, and they were almost ready to put him down. They used the device, and 30 seconds later, the bull was fixed. So they used the setting about male fertility or something like that, as if its fertility was strengthened, and animals respond to that in very weird ways and very effective ways. It's crazy. So I know these things exist. I believe in technology, but I'm not an expert. But I think it's going to be part of new medicine. I totally agree with that.
Okay. So one thing to look in for sure is this device, My Health. You know, it's interesting you bring that up, Nick. That kind of technology, it's good and bad. I mean, the military, you know, uses these different frequencies to control crowds. They even have it so tuned in. I've read that they have one frequency that affects like an older population. Another frequency can affect a younger population. Some of it can completely disable you. And, you know, some can cause, you know, pain. Some can just kind of make you pass out. So it's very interesting. It's scary, but I'm glad there's some positive technology out there too.
Yeah, so, it's definitely concerning what bad uses you can make with wireless technologies of all kinds. Yeah, it's definitely an issue.
Yeah. So let's see. Angela wants to know, can you share this live interview with friends? It's not allowing you to share. I'm not sure why that is, Angela. I have this set to public. So thanks for trying to share it. And is anybody else having an issue sharing? But yeah, please do share this. Get this information out there, because this is something that literally affects all of us. And as Nick pointed out, very few, even functional medicine doctors are considered to kind of like be ahead because, they're looking at the body as a whole. But even functional medicine doctors, which get much better results than a lot of conventional doctors, are still not aware of this information. So we need to do our best to get it out there to help as many people as possible. It's getting worse and worse. I mean, for the past 2 years, we've had a decline in life expectancy. A big part of that is due to the whole opioid epidemic. But if you kind of look across the board, there's been like major increases in addiction rates, right? People are addicted to Facebook. They're, addicted to their phone, video games, porn, all these different things. You have to ask the question, why are people all of a sudden becoming so addicted? Is technology part of that puzzle?
Well, I can tell you, Nathan, I listen to, and it just makes me realize how obsessed I am, because I listen to 100 interviews per week. It's great. I'm always listening to something. And Martin Pall, this researcher about the calcium channels, that's so incredible, PALL. The guy has participated in the latest California Commonwealth meeting, and I listened to the entire thing on audio, and he talked about the fact that he thinks the opioid crisis is due to EMFs, at least partly, and because of the effect that these EMFs have on exciting your neurons. Basically, this is how it works. It's the chemicals activate your NMDA receptors, and the EMFs do the same, and then extra calcium flow in. So it seems like this entire glutamate receptor thing and your brain being on fire, always excited, whether it's from the notifications, from the blue light exposure, or from the EMFs themselves. So who knows if we're technically, our brain wants more signal while the rest of our body, or even our brain itself, suffers from it. So it's being, and let's face it, people are mostly addicted to things that are very destructive to them, right? So when you're addicted to, opioids, heroin, violence, sex and porn, so these things are addictive, and we know we shouldn't do them, and then you're tempted. So there's something in the psyche. For me, it's caffeine. I have a very hard time. I go on, I go off, and then I hate it, and then I love it. it's a form of addiction. You know, we all have our things. Used to be video games, maybe, or you know, anything that's super. I used to be an adrenaline junkie. I still have to watch my ways. So we all have something, and who knows if the signal makes everyone more addicted. The only thing that we know is that there's more signal and there's more addiction. So there's a correlation. Is it causative? I don't know, but let's face it, EMS is a definite thing that's increasing, and without any stop that I can see for now.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so you've got, you know, Martin Paul, who's very well known for his research. Dr. Jack Cruz, he also believes that EMFs are driving this opioid epidemic. And all of us are mainlining these digital drugs, whether we realize it or not, you know, every time we check online. So it's definitely something to be aware of and to consider. But let's see what other questions we have. Let's see. Liam, wired internet, wired phone for the last 2 weeks. Good job, Liam.
Nice.
So yeah, I have talked about that in the past. You know, ditching your Wi-Fi and going back to a good old-fashioned wired network.
I'd say totally.
EMFs.
Totally.
And you know, it's interesting, Nick. A few of my clients that I've recommended to, I mean, this is, I think, part of like their marketing thing. I've got a good friend of mine and client who is so wired into all this tech garbage. He's got all these wireless devices in his house. He can't turn his Wi-Fi off, or he just can't function because he's so used to all these different things. So it's a slippery slope. So I just want to warn people, there's a lot of technology, it's very cool, and it's like, yeah, I got to get this, but it ropes you in to having to surround yourself with these things all the time. And every time you add a new device, you're increasing the amount of radiation that you're being exposed to. It's having a very, very negative effect. And, you know, whenever I go to people's houses, I always kind of observe, like, do they have that wireless Nest thermostat? Do they have several flat screen TVs that are just always on, you know, displaying their photos, or, you know, do they have like the latest this? And it's a disturbing trend. And that's kind of the downside of having a lot of money, is you're always kind of like buying these things if you're not aware of it. So this is one time where having a lot of money can get you sick a lot faster than having less money, if you keep on surrounding yourself with all these different devices. Hey, real quick, thanks so much for checking out my video, and I hope you're getting lots of value and learning some cool stuff. If you're having challenges with your health, I can help. The main thing I help my clients with is improving their energy at the cellular level. So I'm talking about your mitochondria. And what we know from the latest research is that 85 to 90% of all disease is caused by poor mitochondrial function. So when you fix your mitochondria, you improve your energy, and everything gets better. If this is something that you'd like help with, there's a link to my calendar in the description below. Go ahead, you can schedule time for us to talk, and if it looks like we're a good fit, I'll tell you about my program, and if it's something you want to do, we can start working together. I look forward to meeting you, and now, back to the video. Let's see. Angela turns off the power. Good job, Angela.
Very nice. And Nathan, in the meantime, you want me to share something new, because I always have something new. And I just did an experiment last week that blew my mind. On your Wi-Fi router, so everyone listening to this, I want you to find how to get inside your Wi-Fi router's settings, especially if you still use Wi-Fi, because turning off the Wi-Fi router at night is one thing, but what if you could reduce the exposure that your Wi-Fi is emitting by many folds and still have the same speed? And this is what I achieved. So the story, yeah, it's crazy. So I have a Virgin Mobile Wi-Fi here in Montreal. It's an option that we have. I don't know, you probably have that in the States as well. So when you connect, for me, it was just, it's called like a Steve. They have a nickname for their router, Steve. So I go to, I think it's something like steve.com. I don't know, I remember what it is, but for your Wi-Fi router model, you got to call your company or look in the user manual, how can you connect? And usually you'll have a password to enter or a username. Usually it's admin. And then I got into the settings because I wanted to check, okay, is it possible to reduce the signal somehow? I found two things.
Like the strength of the signal.
The strength,
so instead of
either the strength.
For like 50 meters.
Yes, exactly.
Good for 25 meters. Okay.
Exactly. And I use, so basically my Wi-Fi router, I have a hard time with it, Nathan, because it's in the living room. That's the only place we can put it. But I'm going to spend time on the sofa watching TV, watching The Office at night. We're doing a rewatch with Jen. I'm going to spend at least 2 hours every day there. So if I'm being exposed, I'm 4 foot to the router, and I don't love it. I don't like the exposure. And I could measure 2.5 volts per meter. As a comparison, building biologists say stay under 0.2. So that's like tenfold increase. I didn't, wow. 10 times, not tenfold, but I'm like, okay, this is way too high. So we used to have this shielding blanket. It's called a belly blanket. And this is what Jen uses during her pregnancy to shield her belly while she's working on a computer or if she's getting exposed. So I was putting the blanket over the router, and it cut off the radiation at about 0.5, 0.4. So it was, there you go, like reduction of 5 times. So that's good. But by going inside the router setting instead, I found 2 things. So most Wi-Fi routers have 2 signals coming off of it. There's 2.4 gigahertz, and sometimes you have 5 gigahertz or 5.8 gigahertz. So this is what you see. Sometimes you will have 2 Wi-Fi networks to your name, right? Let's say it's you'll have like 2.4 gigahertz Nathan and then 5 gigahertz Nathan. Well, why do you have 2 at the same time, right? It's silly. Well, if one fails, you go to the other, and so it's extra power there that's emitted uselessly, basically, needlessly. So I went in there and I tried turning off the 2.4 or turning off the 5 and seeing which exposure is worse. And by turning off the 2.4 and being just on 5 gigahertz, it's a little bit higher, sure, in the microwave range, but the exposure dropped dramatically. But then I found a button that's a slider and that said intensity. So I'm like, oh my God, is this true? And I reduced it to 10% of the intensity. And guess what? Now I'm sitting at my couch, same router, same download speed, just the coverage has been reduced, and I'm exposed 0.18. So I'm within the guidelines, no change and no blanket on top of the router. So it turns out it's more effective than a shielding blanket that's supposed to shield 99%, but that it didn't quite fit. What a great right? Was that?
Awesome. That's the first time I've heard that, Nick.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so yeah, if you guys are addicted to your Wi-Fi routers and you just can't seem to get rid of them, learn how you can go in to your settings and adjust the strength, the signal strength of it. So that's awesome. That's killer, Nick. So let's see what other questions we have. Let's see, comment from Seth Greenberg. The body voltage meter tells you if it's better to be grounded or insulated. I've measured body voltages that were higher barefoot than when wearing rubber-soled shoes. So great point, Seth. So I guess one example would be if you have buried power lines under the ground. Also, the high voltage tension wires, they're not always well grounded. Where I used to live, I had a grounding strap, and I would go for walks, and there were some of these, high voltage, the big power lines, and I would feel kind of like a slight electric shock on the grounding strap. It went like around my shoe and this, thing wrapped around my ankle. And I was like, wow, this cannot be good to be grounded by these things. So Seth, that's a really good point. Thanks for sharing that. Lori Parker says, what about having under tile water tubing? Does this transmit electrical energy underfoot? I guess it depends on what the tubing's made of. If it's rubber, I think that's a much better option than the heated floors, because I've seen people that have measured the heated floors, which are very, cool in concept. It's nice, you know, in the winter walking barefoot on hot tiles, right? But it puts off a ton of EMFs. So this is the first I've heard of an option for water tubing. If you can get that tubing that's, you know, not metal, because metal can pick up stray voltage from something else. So this is just me talking through it, but I don't have specific experience with this. Anything to comment on that?
I had these kind of tubings in a house in a past house my parents had, and it's a very effective way to just heat the floor. And yes, it doesn't have the EMFs. Or if you install those and realize it's high EMF, even though it's tubing, it might be because your water is electrified. So it's called having voltage on your water pipes, right? Current on your water pipes. So in that case, you want to look with a building biologist or electrician to find the source, because sometimes it's actually a problem that I've heard from building biologists. It might be 7 out of every 10 homes have this problem. So that's where you have electricity and the plumbing in the same spot, right, in your walls. And sometimes you will have plumbing that's copper picking up electric fields. So sometimes what you realize in a home, if you have a meter like that, this is a Cornet ED88T, you'll find, oh my God, I'm at multiple milligauss. So that's the unit of measurement of magnetic fields. You'll have 3, 4, 5 milligauss in your environment, and that's really not ideal. 1 or less is recommended, and 0.1 or less at night if possible. I don't achieve that in this condo, and we don't own it, so we can't really fix that. But if you have very high magnetic fields, usually you have some kind of either plumbing or wiring error going on in your entire home, but it can be fixed by an electrician usually.
Okay, very interesting. Cool. Let's see. So a question from Seth Greenberg. Can you and Nick speak to why being grounded is not always better than being insulated from the ground? So we covered that based on your comment, Seth. So hopefully that answered your question. Nick, anything else to add to that?
Well, if you ground at night inside and you plug your grounding pad or grounding pillow or anything to an outlet, you need to make sure that the circuit breakers are off. That's Klinghardt thing. He said, you know what, Nick, I've been using grounding inside with patients for 40 years. So he knows quite a lot, and in his experience, it's always better to ground, but never with electricity on and never with Wi-Fi on, right? So it's this caveat, it's this one rule you gotta do. Do not use grounding inside unless electricity is turned off. And even then, there might be some downsides. A lot of people, I know I'll get some flack for that from people that have a deeper understanding of building biology. But if you have a building biologist that came to your house and made it clear that it's okay and that your ground actually is grounded, there are all sorts of technical aspects of the issue. But usually grounding is extremely beneficial. And I'm finding benefits. I sleep deeper, and I think I'm detoxing more, and this is really something I think we talked about during our last live. If you start grounding, you might have detox reactions, so you want to use some sort of binder at night. And even Dr. Pompa told me that he has a formula called Bind, and it's probably a mix of different binders. Like you can use Pectosol, that is a type of pectin. You can use chlorella. You could use zeolites, charcoal. So there's a lot of different things that you could do. But once you start grounding, you might feel ill, or let's say a little bit under the weather for a couple of weeks.
Right. And just make sure you're grounding in the right area.
Yes.
Just one comment to add to that, Nick. This is going to change by environment, and this is something you're going to have to pay close attention to. So once they start rolling out 5G, there's a lot of talk about, so 5G has much higher power densities. And the problem with that is there's something called jump conduction. So it can jump from the wireless emitter to your power lines. So even with your circuits off, it can also jump to your grounding sheet. So there's silver threads in the grounding sheet. You could be attracting the stray voltage from 5G to your grounding sheet, doing way more damage.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I haven't seen anyone measure this yet, but once 5G goes live, where you live, you need to pay very close attention to this. And what is working well for you now may not work at all and may do you a lot more harm once we go to 5G.
I agree 110%, Nathan. It's a concern of mine that the entire course I'm trying to put together will be nullified by 5G. I'll have to redo the entire thing. But that's the thing. It changes so fast that we're going to have to keep each other posted. And the community is going to have to come together to do these tests and say, guys, do not ground inside now. It's not good. What cities are 5G? We're going to have a directory of how far the rollout has been made so that people do not start using techniques that might do more harm than good. It's extremely important.
Yeah. Hey, and Nick, one thing I want to point out about your course that's really cool, there's a private Facebook group. So people can share their clinical results that they're getting with their clients and patients. And we can all learn from each other this way. And we can be like, I'm in this city, went 5G. So other people in that city will know, and will know that they're going to have to change their strategies and what they're doing to help mitigate these things.
Definitely.
Let's see. Angela says, Encore is a wire manufacturer. We need to fix some neutral stray currents we found after testing. And I need to have electricians to use low EMF wire. So, yeah, make sure you get an electrician that knows the right wire to use, or Nick, what's the certification for the building biologist?
Well, it's you have two different ones. You have the people that have the complete certification that are building biologists, so it means they can address mold and EMFs and air quality and I think water quality. And then you have the ones that are electromagnetic specialists. I think it's EMS or something like that. So, but if you go on hbelc.org, or if you type in Google building biology, you'll find the website and you can look at the different types of certifications. Some of them only have EMFs. Some of them might even go beyond that and look at mold and other issues, which I do recommend because let's face it, EMFs is not the only thing. If you live in a moldy environment and you don't have EMFs, you might get sick as well. It's all these factors that need to be accounted for.
Yeah, totally, and that's a deadly combination.
Oh, yes.
EMFs, because the EMFs just make the mold grow even faster. So, Nick, do you know of any wires, any kind of wire that's good to wire your home? Let's say you're building a home or you're going to rewire a bedroom or something.
Well, you'll want to. So the normal wires are in plastic. They're called Romex, R-O-X. R-O-M-E-X, brain freeze. But I think it's, so the conduits, there are metal conduits that are used usually in homes where you have earthquakes risks. So it's, in certain states, it's all that, or when it's required by building code. So you look at just wiring and metal conduits. If you Google that, you'll find it. And basically it shields, it keeps the electrical fields inside the conduit, inside of the plastic things. The wires are somewhat separated and they emit and they create by default electrical fields and magnetic fields. So that's normal standard in North America, but in Europe, they're much more aware of these things and some of them use metal conduits.
Okay. Yeah, I know like in cities like New York City, that's part of the building.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's built to code. Right now, the buildings are, safer than buildings in other cities, but I know 5G is coming to New York City soon, so that's going to change.
Well, yeah, and the metal conduit, I mean, it might backfire. Maybe it's going to do the opposite, because if 5G runs on the pipe, right? So I've heard Jack Cruz talk about that, and what happened with a tree that was underground in a sewer, and how the signals were going through that tree and the roots and then in the house. And when signals jump all over the place and you're in a city, it just illustrated how difficult it will be to know, okay, where is this darn thing coming from? I think in a 5G environment, you might have to isolate parts of your house, especially your bedroom, to make it completely signal free. And whether it's using GeoVital paint, that's one type of paint that might be the best, or some sort of white shield that is another recommended brand of shielding paint, or a bad canopy, and making sure that now we contact these bad canopies manufacturer to say, well, do you repel 5G signals in the 30 gigahertz range and is in these higher ranges? And it turns out, Nathan, that one thing about 5G, you mentioned jumping current. Another thing is called the Brillouin principle, and that's basically you've got researchers that looked at millimeter waves. Two guys that I got to pull out my research. I don't have the names in front of me. Two guys from that did research around millimeter waves for the U.S. Air Force, and I think for the Navy, Department of Defense. So these guys are like top scientists, and they looked at something that happens in radar arrays in the millimeter waves. So some radar use millimeter waves. It's only for military communications, but now it's going to go to human, not human, but the public communication. And when you have a lot of different antennas, that's like a phase array that they call, there's a phenomenon where the millimeter waves hit your skin, and then they will create more waves inside your body and go deeper. So I'm butchering the explanation, but what it means, and I heard that from Arthur Feisenberg, I think. He's the author of a new book. It's called, it's called Understanding the Rainbow, I think. But he's an activist, and he just published a great EMF book. I gotta look it up. I'll put it in the comments. I'm looking forward to reading his book, but he talks about that in on the website cellulartaskforce.org, and he talked about this principle and basically the fact that we think millimeter waves will go in surface, maybe 1 millimeter, right? And okay, we'll see effects on the eyes, maybe dehydrate your skin or histamine reactions, but other than that, it's no big deal. It might not be the case. It might penetrate very deep inside your body because of how the signal reacts with biological beings. But again, this won't be measured by the industry before rolling out. So the exposure that they're going to say, oh, it's within the guideline. So who knows? If it goes deeper, then it might be way worse than we expected. It's just, I guess, what's to expect when it comes to 5G is the unexpected. Like, we don't know what's going to happen exactly, but it might be horrible. And from listening to you, Jack Cruz, and different people that have an understanding that's way deeper than me, to be perfectly honest, when it comes to 5G, it looks like they're going to be right, unfortunately.
Yeah. And speaking of that, Jack Cruz just did a podcast with
I have to look at this, yes.
Yeah, listen, it's awesome. So Jack really lays it all out. He describes the science behind how it affects our biology. He draws some really great analogies, with like these school shootings that we're seeing. And he kind of hypothesizes why we're seeing more and more of these events happen. So it's scary stuff, but at the same time, you want to be educated. You want to get ahead of this as much as possible so you can do, if it is, I hope it's not as bad as we think, or as bad as, what we're sharing with you tonight. But if it is, you need to be as armed with as much knowledge as possible to protect you and your family. And that's why Nick is putting this course out there, because we're already seeing a lot of people affected. Once 5G comes, we don't know what's going to happen. We're all guinea pigs. You're more of a guinea pig if you live in a city with 5G. But even now, we're guinea pigs. Nobody has ever lived with this amount of electrosmog, all these EMFs in the environment. So let me see if there's any more questions here. Let's see. Lori Parker makes a comment. A book, The Great Power Line Cover-Up by Paul Brodeur, United Nations Environmental Program, named for his accomplishments in EMFs. So, it's a book some of you may want to read, The Great Power Line Cover-Up, Paul Brodeur. Let's see. Angela has one of the, she got a EMF blanket, so good job, Angela.
Nice.
Mason, I'm wondering about low-income methods to decrease EMFs other than controlling lights, going grounding, getting outside, basics, etc. So we talked about turning off your power circuits. Nick, What are some other low income? And also if you don't have Nick's book, The Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs, get his book because Nick has a bunch. There's links to PDFs for just kind of, what do you call them? Like
the cheat sheets. Yeah.
Cheat sheet. Yeah. Yeah. So lots of great info in Nick's book for that. Micah, we have above ground electrical still in our neighborhood, going 5 feet by the side of the house. How far away should the bedroom be, from these power lines going into the house?
Very difficult to assess unless you have a meter. Again, some secondary power lines can be a problem and some aren't. Sometimes you think you have a high voltage power line in the backyard and you think, oh my God, it's going to be crazy. But lately I've heard from building biologists, Spark Burmaster, that they measured a bunch of power lines and it turns out that the exposure to magnetic field was extremely narrow around the power line, much more than they thought. So houses that were right next to it, no problem. So you can say generally you want to go as far as possible, but if it's in your backyard, well, you got to invest in something like this is Cornet. It can be Acousticum 2, or the version for magnetic field would be PF5. So that's a good meter as well, recommended by Mercola. And I'm going to get probably my next combo would be a PF5 and Acousticum 2. So you're going to know the numbers. If you live inside a home and it's 12 milligauss and it's exposure from the power line, I don't have very good advice for you because you can barely shield these. So it means move the hell out. And I rarely say that in such strong terms because I'm very diplomatic. Usually I'm a journalist. Jack Rose will say, move, right? And it will be right in that case. You cannot do anything about a power line, right? So and magnetic fields cannot be shielded. 12 milligauss, your health will suffer. It's horrible.
Yeah, and he lays that out very clearly in the podcast. Once 5G comes, your only option is to move. So pay attention. Don't wait till it's too late if you own real estate in these big cities where they're rolling it out. Because if everyone runs for the exits at once, you're going to be stuck. You're not going to be able to get rid of your house, or you're going to take a massive loss. So start to pay attention to these things. Nobody wants to kind of think about having to sell their house and move, but it comes down to choosing between your health and convenience at the end of the day. So I wish we had some simpler answers for you guys. Let's see, Liam Cregan. I used to be grounded with socket, got heart palpitations. Now I have a purpose rod. So I assume you mean you have your grounding blanket or whatever grounded directly to the ground, which is a wise move.
Yes, definitely.
Let's see, Lori Parker in California, they're putting 5G on mailboxes. Shit. Let's see, Denise is signed up for the course.
Awesome, thank you, Denise.
That's it for questions. So if you guys have any other questions, let us know. But Nick, can you just give us a quick overview of the different modules on the course?
Sure. So basically, the course is open until, well, the sales are open until March 11. Right now, we've sold out, as I mentioned. But if you go on the page, if you go to Electrosmog Rx /JTOH for Journey to Optimal Health, you'll find that we have a waiting list. So if you want to get in line, you'll hear about it next week and when we're going to open 200 more spots. So I think we already have 50 people on the waiting list. So I cannot actually, at this point, I cannot promise you anything. But let's. That's great. It's awesome. But at the same time, to be honest, I would want to open it to 1,000, 5,000 people. It's not like I want to let people out, and I hate doing that. But I want to be there to answer every single question. So if we let more than 300 people in, I'm not going to be like, I'll burn myself out. I know, and I tend to do that. I want to help so much. So we're going to start with this, but I can promise you that, Nathan, and everyone listening to this, if you miss out, there's going to be an evergreen version. You're going to have the replay, and we're going to put that together as soon as possible. I think it will be in May. That's going to be available to everyone all the time. and it's still going to be the beta, but in the future, I want to make it way better than that, because for the moment, it's going to be 5 webinars, and it's not the ideal format. I would love to have shorter videos and professional quality, but I want to get this info out there right now and not in like Q4 2020, because I want to make things pretty. So it's raw. Yeah. It's going to be 5 webinars in 5 weeks. So it starts with the first webinar is basics, right? Because I want to get everyone up to date on what's happening, what are the frequencies we're exposed to, what are the possible effects, what degree are we exposed to. So for example, the average city right now has a quintillion times higher exposure compared to background levels that just our parents used to be exposed to. So this is the crazy exposure, and showing you these numbers and the amount of cell phone towers, so you know what's a portrait. And also talk a little bit about 5G, because I think it's extremely important. It's going to become basics for everyone to know, okay, it's going to change, how it's going to change. So the basics, we're just going to round that up with basically the basic understanding of EMFs. The second webinar, so that will be the next week, will be on the 19th of March. It's going to be EMF Science. So in just 1 hour, I want to do a rundown of, okay, what are the mechanisms, what's credible, who should you believe when it comes to science, industry versus independent studies, and look at the different reasons also why studies are not enough to assess if EMFs are really dangerous. And I have identified so many ways, Nathan, that studies currently screw up our understanding. For example, when they use a signal generator, it's been proven now by at least one review that when they use a signal generator, they get fewer effects. When they use a real cell phone, instead of the lab tested signal generator, they get more effects. Because so it means
interesting. So you're saying in that when they do the lab studies, they're using the signal generator
exactly instead of a real phone, because it's like, oh, because it's more stable, you don't have to plug it in, right? It's like more controlled experiment. Well, it means that maybe all the studies out there are vastly, grossly underestimating the health effects. So explaining the science to practitioners, I think it's extremely important, and trying to do a rundown of the most credible reviews that looked at hundreds of other studies, looking at, okay, is it true that EMFs do nothing? I'll run through that, and at the end of the presentation, you'll be convinced that in front of the science, it's crazy, the science that's out there. I'm not saying it's definitive, but it's strong. It's so strong. Number 3 webinar will be about symptomology. So how do you recognize someone who is sensitive? What are the common complaints? And also what to ask your patients or clients when they come into the practice. So what questions? And I'm going to create a cheat sheet with that. So you're going to be able to have patients fill in like, okay, do you have a cordless phone? Do you have a smart meter? Do you have this or that? You're going to know all these things, because if you miss one, you miss the Wi-Fi router under the bed. And then you wonder why they don't sleep. And you're like, you put them on GABA, you put them on chamomile tea and this and that, and homeopathy, but then you don't realize it's a router, right? So you don't want to miss one thing. So it's really, symptomology is about this thing, and seeing, okay, people who treat electromagnetic sensitivity, what do they do? And what are they seeing in the symptomology? How can it be ameliorated also? And the 4th webinar will be about mitigation, how to remove the sources. So the basic, it starts with the basics. We talked about removal of cell phone from the bedroom, Wi-Fi router placement, but also what are the mitigation strategies that Klinghardt finds essential for very sick people. So we're going to go from healthy, maybe they can tolerate more, moderate, maybe they're fairly healthy, and then the very sick people, you're probably going to have to step it up, right? And the number 5 is a webinar, the last one, is about resilience, because even if you shield your own home, you live in the woods, what if you go in a city and you go to a job, right? You're exposed all the other hours in your day. So it's also about quenching this cycle of inflammation called the no-ono cycle, nitric oxide peroxynitrite. And there's a whole explanation which shows why EMFs affect us so much in synergy with heavy metals and mold toxins and pesticides and emotional trauma, so many other aspects. And how can you raise your body's ability to cope with signals, which I think is also important, because if you're not strong, if you do not have certain health mitigation techniques, certain lifestyle changes, certain supplements, certain foods that support your body's ability to have antioxidants. So whether it's glutathione or superoxide dismutase, SOD, you gotta have these things inside your body, or else the EMFs are coming in and they're destroying you. It's really what's happening on the cellular level or mitochondrial level. So it's also raising your mitochondrial activation, mitochondrial biogenesis. All these things can help. So I'm gonna try to do a lowdown. Again, it could be just this module could be 12 hours, to be perfectly honest. Like, it's so vast. Mitochondrial optimization. We could talk about cold exposure and these things, and Jack and a lot of other people would be better placed to talk about those. And in the future, I want to branch out these modules and have more interviews for people who want to go deeper. But for the moment, it's going to be the curriculum. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at the end, you know what's up. You know how to add EMFs, the basics. And I really want to lay the foundation. So while we go about with the program, if people ask, you know what, I have this struggle with my patient, they don't listen to me. Okay, I'm gonna figure out a way to explain them in a single sheet. Okay, what's up with EMS? What are the symptoms? What's the science for skeptics? So we're gonna add more material as we go through the course. This is why it's a beta version. I want your feedback. And from the feedback, we're going to create something way better down the road, and you'll have full access at a fraction of the price. So that's also a perk of joining now.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I'm excited for it, Nick. So I can't wait to learn some new things. And yeah, I mean, like you said, this is always changing. So we're going to have to stay on top of our game. We're going to have to continue to learn these things so we can help ourselves, help our clients, help our family, whoever. So sounds like an awesome course, very exciting. I think a few new questions came in.
Sure.
Let's see. So Heidi says, I live in a HOA condominium project, and they just installed 5G, and I'm starting to get headaches right now. I do not know if there is an association. How can I shield myself? Well, Heidi, we talked about that a few minutes ago. I mean, there's only so much you can do to shield your. Is it 5G, or is it just the your Wi-Fi says 5G on it? Because Nick was talking about that earlier. So go back and listen to this, because we kind of covered that before. But Nick was talking about how you could modulate, you could decrease the frequency or decrease the signal power on your Wi-Fi. So you can do that, but you can't control your neighbors. So it might come down to you moving if turning it down in your own apartment.
Yeah, or using maybe a Faraday bed canopy. It's also an opportunity to try that. However, I do not know if these will block 30 gigahertz or 60 gigahertz, right? So with 5G in, I'm personally now when I get access to a new EMF blocking thing, a lot of people are started because I do podcasts and these interviews. People are reaching out to me. I have this cool company and we shield everything at 3 gigahertz, and I'm like, well, guys, what about 30 or 60 gigahertz? And they're like, well, I don't know. The manufacturer hasn't told me. Well, you better ask. Because within 2 years, it's going to be a new problem. So you might as well, on a marketing standpoint, come on, guys, be ahead of the game and market. We're already 5G ready. Like, I'm just trying to push them, but they don't get it. They don't see exactly what's coming, and they're no expert when it comes to EMS. They're just trying to put the product together and kind of surf on the EMF wave that's becoming more popular,
Yeah. So yeah, good point. I mean, you definitely have to be wary of that. Because in many cases, there's really no way for them to test their stuff to see if it works. Because until you have the actual environment to test it in, you're not going to know.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Lori Parker, will the course be streamed so I can go back to review the webinars?
Sure. Well, so every webinar will be on Monday evening, 5 p.m. PST. 8 p.m. EST, so I'm going to stay late for you guys, and I think I'm going to wear these orange glasses and talk to practitioners about blue light and why I'm wearing those, because even though I look better and more like professional with none of these glasses on, but still. So it's going to be at this time. However, the replays are going to be available soon after the webinars. So you're going to get audio video. So people that prefer listening to podcasts are going to have audio, the videos if you're sitting on your computer, and then also transcripts. I'm going to have full transcripts ready within, let's say, 48 hours maximum. You're going to have full transcripts ready. So that way you can still participate in the communications in a group, talk about your feedback, and also ask questions for the next webinar. So I'm going to really make this a very participative course where before the first webinar, we're going to ask everyone in the group, okay, guys, what do you want to learn about the basics? And if there's no one who cares about the basics, maybe we'll change things up. So I want to make this really for you guys and not just what I want to say, right? So we're going to see where everyone's level is at, and then we're going to go from there. So to answer your question, yes, there are going to be replays.
Awesome, awesome. So Diane asks, could we be notified via email of these webinars? Is membership required? Yeah, Diane, you're going to have to sign up for the course. Nick sold out his first 100 seats, so you can sign up for the waiting list. And I'm sure Nick will keep you apprised of all the class times and everything.
Sure.
Let's see here. Denise, Nick, we're getting used to everyone wearing orange glasses. Keep wearing them. You look great.
Thank you. Will do. Thank you. But I want to preach by example. It's true, and it's true that when I go to the movies, the movies, I must be honest. If I look at IMAX, I know it's blue light fest in my eyes. Nothing good for my biology, but I'll remove them. But still, in the subway train and in public, now I feel fairly comfortable. Even though I'm the weirdo, I figure within a couple of years, maybe I'll be like just normal. That's my hope. And people will be like, oh, orange glasses, why is that? Oh, I've heard about blue light. So it makes people realize that these things, oh, why is this guy doing that? Why would you do that? Is it just because he's eccentric? No, there's actually a reason behind it. And some people ask me, I tell them, and they're like, oh, okay, well, blue light, interesting. And they get on board, I think. I don't know if they're were them. It's another step down the rabbit hole, but still.
Yeah, 1% at a time. You know, I had my blue light on the other night. I went into this natural food store, and the store manager, he asked me about it. And I told him, I'm like, you guys should seriously consider carrying them here. And he's like, I'm going to look into it.
Nice.
So, yeah. So let's see. I don't see any other questions. So, Nick, anything else you want to share about your Electrosmog Rx course?
Well, it also includes a couple of bonuses. I've included, for example, if you haven't read my book, there's going to be a PDF of my book, just so that you can learn the basics if you want to. But either way, it's not mandatory reading. It's going to be in the first webinar. If you want to learn more on different topics, there are 5 interviews that I've done with Dr. Klinghardt, Dr. Ben Lynch about epigenetics and EMFs, very interesting. Aura Miller is the building biologist. I've got Gaetan Chevalier, he's the world's top expert on grounding. And I've got all these different things. So there's 5 interviews in there with transcripts and much more. So definitely a ton is included. And you'll also get access to future interviews that I do. I want to have Jack Cruz on for sure. I don't know if Nathan, you can connect me, but I would love to have Jack talk about the quantum biology aspect. To be fairly honest, it's very hard to grasp this aspect, and when he's on a podcast, he can put it in such simple terms compared to blogs. Blogs are really hard to decipher, to be fairly honest. Yeah,
definitely easier to follow on podcasts. But I'll reach out to Jack and let him know. I'm sure he'd love to do it.
That'd be great.
I mean, Jack is doing everything he can to get this information out there. I mean, he really, just like you, Nick, Jack wants to help as many people as possible too. So I'm sure he would love to do it. One more question just came in. So Micah asks, are brick homes with concrete floors more at risk with the new coming 5G than homes made out of wood with hollow walls?
Very hard to tell. I would say both of these are fairly good. If you have concrete, usually it blocks a lot of signal, especially RF. I don't know about millimeter waves, but I think it's good to have constructions that are sturdy like that. Maybe natural wood is better. I couldn't tell.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of these things we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I've seen, one strategy is to kind of build your home into the earth.
Yes.
And have the home facing away from the population dense area. So if you have a big city to the west of you, then you want to be facing your home to the east in the opposite way, so you're not getting that radiation in your home. So yeah, so Nick, I want to thank you so much. You answered a ton of questions tonight, and this is a kind of a long fight we're going to be in together for a long time, and keep doing your great work of getting this information out there and giving people different things and strategies that they can do to protect themselves and their families.
Thank you, Nathan, and it was great talking. And let's do that again sometime. It's always a pleasure with your community, and it means a lot that you're sharing the message, and you're always on top of things, asking the best questions. And your folks, I'm just developing a great love affair with you guys, because you're always there, always excited for the lives, and it's great to see that, and the feedback. People buy the book and they participate, and I'm so glad. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, awesome, Nick. Hey, well, thanks so much. I'll definitely have you back, and we'll do a follow-up. It would be good to do it after your first run of the course.
Oh, yes.
So, because every time I talk to you, you learn new things. Oh, actually, Nick, one more question,
sure,
if you don't mind. The other day we were emailing, and you were talking about the TSA full body scanners.
Oh, my
God. How it might be better not to opt out.
Oh my God, yeah, I gotta tell you that. Okay, in 2 minutes after that, I gotta go to the movies tonight and blast my eyes with blue light, I think. But anyway, we're just celebrating the launch and taking it easy. But okay, 5G. So I've compared the power density of a cell phone versus a TSA scanner. Okay, a TSA scanner, when you look at the model, is called an LTD provision, and it's what's used in almost all across America. And I verified this. Well, even in Canada, I was at the Toronto airport lately, and I saw that as well. In Detroit as well, I can tell you that. So most models have that. The power density, you don't have to retain the units. It's 90 microwatts per square meter. It's just considered 90 units of radiation, if you don't want to be too confused about it. The power density of a cell phone is up to 500,000 microwatts per square meter next to your head. Wow. Okay, but so in the millimeter range though, so at 30 gigahertz versus 3 gigahertz for your cell phone at the moment, or let's say 1, 2, 3. So if you have your neighbor using a 5G phone next to you on a subway train, you're essentially getting zapped with 1 to 5,000 TSA scans per second. This is the exposure that we're facing, and this is scary numbers, but it just makes you realize two things. It's kind of silly to opt out TSA in a sense if you still use your cell phone, and compared to the background levels at the airport itself, and also with that.
And just flying too. I mean,
and
you're
flying
exposed to
and
so
flying.
much,
so
high levels of radiation.
Exactly.
When you step in the plane, and it takes
exactly.
off.
So I was just shocked when I realized it's true. The 90 microwatts per square meter. I'm like, if my house were at 90 microwatts per square meter, I would be happy and sleeping soundly. So it's how little this radiation is, and yet people fear it for some reason. They haven't looked at the specs, and they don't realize that they skip the scan and they have the pat down, and then they have their phone and they talk with the phone, and they're getting exposed to so much worse levels of radiation. So it's just ironic. I've just realized that digging through the documents about the provision LTD, and I'm like, it's just misunderstanding so much from the public, not understanding. Yeah.
Very good to know. So don't hold your cell phone up to your head. You know, another disturbing trend I see so many so-called healthcare professionals, health coaches, different things like that, wearing these wireless earbuds in your ears. So you're putting antennas in your ears, attracting EMFs basically to your brain. And they cross-communicate right through your brain. Not a wise move. So, Nick, I'll let you head off to the movies.
Awesome.
But thanks so much for joining me. Thanks, everyone who watched tonight and asked some great questions. share this. If you're interested in the course, there's a link in the description to this Facebook Live. So thanks. If you're watching the replay, ask questions. And if Nick has time, he'll come back and answer them. If I'll answer them. And we will see you guys. All right, I'll see you guys next week. And Nick, I'll see you soon, man. Take care.
Sure. Take care, Nathan.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night.